Hello and welcome to another episode of the Heal Deal podcast. It is an honor to have my friend, my colleague, Dr. Barbara Swinney, life and holistic leadership expert. We're both on fire. We just finished a empowering, healing, encouraging conference.
Yes.
I mean, just seeing her put together this amazing event. And I was honored to be a part of that event. And we're going to talk more about what she does and her passion. But I just want to take this opportunity to just let you know how appreciative I am to have you on the Heal Deal podcast to share your story of how you heal, lead, and leverage your story and help other women do the same. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I'm a little, what do you call it? I feel like right now, even though you're my friend, I feel like I'm talking to a celebrity right now.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm actually a little nervous talking to one of my best friends. So
Wow. Well, you know what? I was thinking as you were talking, because we talk and we laugh and we can't stop laughing and all of that. We call ourselves the cool nerds and all of that. But as you were talking, as you were introducing the podcast, I felt a little weird because I don't get to interact with you in this mode. So it's super cool that we both get to know the personal behind the professional and then be able to honor and respect the professional. So I will introduce myself. I am Dr. Barbara Swinney. I am a life and holistic leadership coach and coach trainer. I am the founder and CEO of Deeper Women Lead Global, which is a platform established for women in leadership to heal, lead, and leverage their stories and strategies for life, love, and leadership. And we did just come off of an amazing conference that I probably called Dr. Leona about stressing, trying to make everything come together, but it came off beautifully as women were healed, as women were learning how to become more effective leaders in their own lives, and as women walked away thinking about how they could leverage what they've gone through, how they can get out of the hurt and really start using the character development to support other women. So I'm super excited to be here with you, Dr. Leona, and to talk about the event from this weekend.
yes, yes. So what I found so amazing about what you did this year, because I've been part of your event in some form or fashion for the last 3 years now.
Yes.
You know, I've been a part of your anthology, released a couple years ago, and I've seen how your platform has grown and evolved. And what I want to discuss is really talk about how your event has evolved through for the last couple years, because you did something different this year. And would you mind sharing how it was different this year and why it was so powerful?
I did do something different this year. And when I first started to tell my story, of course, I wasn't that far from the divorce, from the demotion. So that was the story because that's where I was. But I found that the further I got from the story and the more that I was able to heal from what was the trauma or understand the trauma behind it, the less I identified with the story. So I didn't want to keep saying, let's share our stories and strategies for life, love, and leadership. So I did a little shift and started asking, how can we heal? And once you heal, you will automatically, almost, it's inevitable that you become a more effective leader in your own life. So how can we lead ourselves like these women in leadership have been leading these powerful organizations? So how can we take that same skill set that we've used for other people and use it for ourselves? Because you have to reconcile all of the stuff inside of you before you can see it on the outside of you, which means once you heal and you start to establish a clear and compelling vision for yourself, as you start to establish a clear plan for yourself, as you gain clarity about your identity, your brand, then that starts to show up in the workplace in a completely different place. So it has the ability to supersize what you're actually doing in the workplace. So I wanted to move away from just sharing your story, because I don't want to just sit around and talk about what I've gone through, but how am I using that to dominate in the marketplace, to establish a platform, to give other women in leadership the space to heal, to lead, and to really share their stories and master that story, and then use that to leverage. So the difference, I know I went around the block about 4 times, but the difference between what I used to do, which is inviting women on the stage to share their stories, it was twofold. It was a marketing and branding event for speakers who are actually already telling their stories, but are looking to really solidify their platform around their story. So I took women, all of the women that stood on that stage were women who had gone through my coaching program. The middle pathway is really called the Coach to Lead program. And that's the pathway where there are women who are already speaking, and maybe they've written a book, maybe they have a podcast, but they're not quite sure of, how do I package this whole thing and make it a thing? How do I monetize the thing? And then really start using that to lift other women. So that was the difference. The coaching program was different. But what I didn't want to do, Dr. Leona, is lose the empowerment part where we invite other women into the room, because there's power in seeing other women that have gone through similar things, that have had similar experiences, and then you see them on this stage as powerful beings, and they are able to do that because they've worked through their stories.
Yes. And there is so much power in that story, and me outside looking in and seeing what you're doing. Because I remember when this was a vision of yours. So
Yes.
actually seeing it happen was amazing to me. So I was looking at it with different eyes over the
Yeah.
weekend. And the most powerful part, I didn't get a chance to tell you this, but the most powerful part about what you did was on the second day when you had several women share their story for the first
Yes.
time.
Yes.
And those were the most powerful. They were all powerful,
Yes.
but it was something about the first timers that finally got a safe place to share their story, and how you had that platform created for them to be able to feel empowered and have the courage to do that. And
Yes.
it moved me. So there was that power in the story. And what I would like you to share is how I know that them sharing that story for the first time moved into that phase of healing.
Yes.
Because when you
Yes.
share that story, I know they shifted in
Yes.
some way by sharing it for the first time. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. And the thing that gave me chill bumps, of course, was them sharing their stories. And of course, I had heard the stories before they got on the stage, because, we have to vet to make sure that they are representing the brand. But it was the standing ovations that each of them got after they shared their stories. It was the support from the women in the room. And that gave me chill bumps, because when I was going through all of my stuff, the stuff that led me into this good place, I did not have that support, or in my head, I thought I didn't have it. So I didn't reach out for it. So to see all of those women stand up and applaud those women who were telling their stories for the first time was simply amazing to me. It made everything worth it for me. And hearing them tell their stories for the first time, and them actually walking through the story, it was almost like as they were going through the story, they were saying it's okay. Like, you could almost like literally see them grow bigger as they were telling the story. Like, physically they were transforming as they were telling the story, because now this is no longer a story I have to hold in my head or hold in my body. Now I get to release it. And when you release it, it stops the contraction. And you actually become bigger, and you see that, oh my gosh. And then those women standing up, even the women that were crying, you get to see that, oh my gosh, my story is impacting other women. And then it goes to, I have something valuable to share with other women. Because a lot of times we don't share because we think, well, what are people going to think about? What do I have to say? Who am I to say anything? So sharing your story, I believe, re-establishes you as an authority in the thing that you went through. because most of this hurt and trauma, even though my trauma may not have been caused by anything similar to what yours was caused by, it has the same effect. It has a shrinking effect. And anytime you get to release that from your body, there is a freedom that comes. There's a weight that lifts from you. And then you realize, I am not the story, and I'm no longer in the story, but now I can use that to help us get through what we need to get through. And I can help other people who have to sit across from me, because these stories really all kind of have a universal theme. We're all just evolving, Dr. Leona. We're evolving. And I say back to our 3-year-old selves who knew we could do anything.
Yeah.
Or we were pressed down and told we can't do anything.
Yeah, that reminds me of the powerful panel session that
Oh my gosh.
I was a part of as well. And it was the similarities
Yes.
of everybody had different stories, completely different stories,
Yes.
but it just seemed like there was a commonality in all of them. And
Absolutely.
I think a lot of women try to compare themselves. Well, I wasn't molested as a child, or
Right.
I didn't lose my firstborn child. There was so
Right.
many things that we tend to compare ourselves to.
Right.
But one thing that you really elaborated on or really addressed was about trauma. And trauma is different for everybody. It's
Absolutely.
like one thing that affects one person may not affect someone else the same way, or that trauma may not move that person, because we
Absolutely.
heard some very personal, strong stories where even I related to myself, like, wow, I'm complaining about weight.
Yeah.
He gained weight and she went through that. But I had to check myself. We can't really do that because we all have a story that's going to move us. But what I found in the commonality was in all those stories, at some point, we all lost ourselves and
Yes.
who we were.
Yes.
So one thing we talk about how the story heals, because when you were saying that, I don't want to be all over the place either.
Yeah.
But this is what happens when you interview your friends. Okay.
Yes.
We just this is like y'all listening. This is a conversation between friends right now.
Right.
But what happens is when we are sharing a story, and that healing power of the story and sharing that story, which leads to leading. But one more thing I want to say about healing before we go into leading is that healing doesn't just happen in doctors' offices.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
I said this during the panel. We try to look for that vitamin, that
Yes.
supplement, that medication or something that needs us to heal. And that's what the Heal Deal podcast is about. This is
Yes.
about real issues that lead to
Yes.
healing. And sometimes sharing a story in a room, with people that support us can be healing.
Absolutely.
Even one of the speakers talked about her overcoming Crohn's disease,
Yeah.
and another client was talking about she overcame seizures. And
Yes.
a lot of this was through prayer and changing the direction of their life around. So a lot of these healings can happen just by believing in ourselves again and becoming found again. So
Absolutely.
back to the point I was trying to
Yeah.
make, it seems like when we're trying to heal, that core thing was finding ourselves.
Yes. And I said this yesterday, I believe, at the conference. The thing we're trying to heal is really a reconciliation of our identity, because the hurt and all of that stuff comes from, in the marriage. I was really expecting things of my ex-husband that he didn't have the capacity to give me. Some of the things that I was asking him to do would be like asking my dog to wash the dishes. So it was really unfair for me to expect that he could give me these things when he was not giving these things himself. And when I started to realize that, it really did help me to release it and help me understand that he was really in the same process that I was in. It was just that I had reached a level of awareness, and now I can go into the healing. And you talked about the pills and the medicine that we take and all of that. About 75 to 90% of the health issues we face come from toxic thinking. So in some ways, we're making ourselves sick. We're doing it to ourselves. So if we can clear up the things that we are thinking, sometimes the Crohn's disease, all of the other stuff that we're struggling with, not saying that you don't need to get medical help and medical assistance, they sometimes dissipate, or the effects of them are eliminated, or they decrease because of that. I remember, and I told this story on the first day about, I call it my in the closet moment, when I first started to realize there's something else, there's something more, there's something greater. A few years ago, I was walking around, Dr. Leona, with just kind of a looming sense of sadness. I didn't know what it was. I even went to the doctor and I said, I was about to turn 40. So I asked, is there such thing as I'm about to be 40 blues? And she said, actually, there is. She said, but just focus on the party. And I was like, focus on the party? You can't give me some pills or something? I want some pills so I can get done with this. But she didn't give me pills. She just said, focus on the party. I didn't listen to any of that. It wasn't a party because I wasn't even having a party because I was depressed. But it sent me to an inward place, and I started asking the questions. Miles Monroe says there are 5 questions that every leader must ask, and that's, who am I? Where am I from? What am I supposed to be doing? What are my gifts, and what do I value? And it's in those questions that you start to answer. It is in the quietness that you start to answer. And I always tell my clients, if quiet time is a requirement, you have to do that as you go through my programs, because that's where the clarity is. When we shut out all of the noise, sometimes I'll sit and just say, God, you're the only thing that's real. Everything else, we're literally making it up. We made up in our minds this mic came to be. We made up in our minds this computer came to be. So we have to think about what we're making up in our minds that we are manifesting in front of us, in our bodies, in our spirits, even letting certain things come in and cultivate certain things in our bodies.
Absolutely. Yep. Ooh, so powerful. It's like, is there so many levels to this? It's so many levels. Because what I like to say is healing the emotional, physical, chemical, spiritual. It all comes in together. And I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm interviewing. But that is just a powerful thing. It's just using our stories, and there's those different layers, because we both have stories.
Yes.
It's like everybody in that room had a story.
Absolutely.
And how it really changed their lives. And what I learned that in leadership, there was no one in there in that place of leadership that didn't have a story. There was no one in that room that didn't have a story. And that's what we got to understand. And using that story to help people in the areas of their lives. Like your story helps people incorporate women in corporations heal. Where my story is helping people kind of make that connection between their health and their story.
Yes.
So one thing that I like about your platform is that you say that you're a holistic leadership expert.
Yes.
So what I'm getting into now is more of I guess we can get more into the leveraging, because we talked about the healing, and we did go into leading, and what you just said was a lot of it had to go with leading ourselves and leading our thoughts and leading our actions.
Absolutely.
So how do you leverage it now? Let's go into that.
So this whole thing started, and it's what's so powerful is the healing, leading, and leveraging. Initially, I thought it came within an instant. It was like, now this is what I'm doing. And the healing, leading, and leveraging didn't come about until maybe January, when I did a masterclass around leveraging what you've lost. And it was kind of, as I was preparing that mastermind, it's when the light bulb went off. I don't want to talk about the divorce anymore. I don't want to talk about the demotion anymore. Like, that is not even who I am. And it's no longer what people attach to me. So when you think about Dr. Barbara Swinney, if you go and Google me or any of that, you're not going to even see my career. You're going to think this is what I do. You're going to think I'm a life and holistic leadership coach. So that's a new story. So we have to start we don't want to attach ourselves to any story because it could change at any time. We've got to know when to move on from the story. So we don't get healed just to sit in the healing, because we all have a purpose for being here. And the real purpose, and I don't want to, I know the Dalai Lama just stuck his tongue out and asked the kid to suck his tongue, but he did say something really good before all of that. The real purpose for all of us being here is to help each other. And how do you do that? You use your gift to help each other. So I know that my gift is I'm a strong visionary. I can see things in my head, and then I know how to make it happen in the earth. That's just my gift. And then I can see things in you and show you how to get clear about what it is that I see. I can walk you through that and then help you manifest it in the earth. So I have to use all of that stuff. Yes, I went through divorce. All of that was really to cultivate and develop this gift, not just so I can just sit in the cultivation. Oh, I'm healed. I can sit down now. But as I continue to leverage, as I continue to help other women establish their platforms, as I continue to open the space and make it safe for other women to share their platforms, what I'm also really doing is giving them the space to lead themselves, teaching them what that looks like, because I had to take agency over myself. I had to regain custody of myself because I had given up all of my rights. And I used to say in my marriage and at work all the time that I don't have a voice. And it wasn't until I started tracing that, until I realized that that came from me being the youngest of 10 children. And in my family, there was a year between every child until it got to me. So there are 4 years between me and the next child, the next brother. And that means all of them were my caretakers. From the time that I was born, they fought over me before I was born, because the boys wanted to increase their kingdom and the girls wanted to maintain their queendom, because there were, 6 girls and 4 boys. So all of that played into this reconciliation of my identity. So when everything started to fall apart, I was angry with my family, because they loved me, they doted on me, they did what a family should do, but it led me to this place of addiction to external affirmation. And I even had to unpack that. I called my brother one day and I said, y'all told me wrong. You told me wrong. And I was angry because now what? Now that I'm not getting the hand claps, how am I supposed to deal with that? I already had the doctoral degree. I already was at the height of my career. What claps do I get beyond that? And that's when I had to go inside and I had to start asking myself questions like, what was in me that caused me to accept less than my value? And it was because I didn't know my value. My value was in the hand claps. My value was in the degrees. My value was in my family looking and putting me on this pedestal. I talk about that in my book, It's Always Deeper. I suffered from the pedestal syndrome. They put me on atop the pedestal, and then I gained weight and my butt couldn't fit on the pedestal anymore. So I'm struggling trying to stay up there when all of this stuff is crumbling around me. So the whole piece of it really is identity. We've been victims of identity theft, and we tend to marry ourselves to all of this different stuff. And you know what happens when you're married and you get a divorce? It's like ripping something apart. And it's the same relationship with everything else. It's the same relationship with your job. If you're tied to your job in that way, then that job doesn't exist anymore. It's like ripping. And you've got to learn how to get some sandpaper and shave down all of those little bumps that don't belong anymore. And that's where the healing part comes in.
And you made some really strong points when you first said, you don't really talk about your divorce anymore. It is something about how we started our stories. Like in my first book, A Journey to Healing, I talk about that weight loss and the depression and everything I was going
Yeah.
through. And I realized I don't really talk about it that much either. It's
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
forget, like, oh yeah. But you made some good points about being a victim of identity theft. And I
Yeah.
know a lot of my story was being a doctor and how to
Hmm.
act a certain way.
Hmm.
And I'm not supposed to do this or say this because I'm a
Hmm.
doctor. But
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
a human, I'm a person. I have hurts and disappointments just like everybody else. And
Absolutely.
learning to leverage that to really learn to connect with my
Yes.
clients. So it really
Yes.
helps us to connect better.
And
But it's very powerful how I feel like, I don't like to talk about myself.
right.
And
Right.
I think when you were saying that, I understand why now,
Yeah.
because I guess I've gotten not disconnected with my story.
Yeah.
This doesn't define me. It's like I'm over
Right.
it. I
Right.
moved
Right.
on from that.
Right. Right. Right.
Like, yeah, I was an engineer, big deal.
Yeah.
It's like not a big deal to me. And I
Right.
think that's why I don't like to talk about myself, but I
Yeah.
like to talk about where I am now and
Yes.
how I can help others.
Yes.
All that was experience. And I think
That's
that's
good.
where that evolution comes from. Is like
That's good.
we're in our 50s now.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry. But it's just that's
Look,
where that wisdom
barely,
comes
barely.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one of
And
the things that I like to, Dr. Leona, about the event yesterday, what at the event, we had one of the young ladies who told her story for the first time. I saw her Facebook post, and she listed all of the accolades of the women that were in the room. We had doctors, we had lawyers, we had resort developers, we had realtors, we had an array of experience
yeah.
and positions and degrees in the room. But I felt like the stories in the room leveled the playing ground and the playing field. And it did not matter that you were, the owner of 608 acres in the Dominican. It did not matter if you were a shareholder in this company or that company. None of that mattered. The only
Yeah.
thing mattered is that you were a woman and you were in the room, and everybody is there to lift the boats. And when I talk about
Yes.
leverage, it's not about money. Money comes. We talk about money a lot, but money comes when you heal. Money comes. I have an affirmation that I say every morning. I'm so grateful that money comes to me in increasing quantities from multiple sources on a continuous basis. And that, we start out, in these businesses. At one point, I was using my business kind of as a weapon, as a tool. Like I'm going to show them and all of that. And that's not what any of this is about. So even as you start, and I want to, encourage people, you don't have to be all the way healed to get started. You will, as you get in this and you start to see the impact on other women and understand their needs, at some point your focus leaves you and you start to turn, your heart starts to turn for the healing of other women. Because once you wake up and you truly sit in the authority of who you are, no competition is needed. Because I know my lane, and I know what works for me. I know that there's enough for everybody, and every story has an audience.
Hmm. I noticed that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that too because it was powerful just seeing the diversity of women. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it was an even playing field
It
for
wasn't
those
easy.
who were seasoned speakers to the ones who were speaking for the first time. I noticed that it was a nice level playing field, and we were
Yes.
all just feeding off of each other.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. No,
Yeah.
no
And
dignitaries. Even if you walked in as a dignitary, and usually we don't put ourselves in those categories. Other people are putting us in those categories because I feel like I'm just Barbara. It's just me. And one of the ladies pointed out, even as I'm moving into this new arena, she said that familiarity with a person can be dangerous sometimes because if I'm too familiar with you, you don't always know how to protect the gift. And you think it's me, but it's really the gift that you're trying to help me to protect. And I have to, as I move into this new arena, be more discerning of who to allow to be familiar, and then who I need to basically keep as a client, so to speak. Because, sometimes your clients become your friends. You have to be discerning and understand where you are in what season.
Yes, yes. Woo! I tell you, we can go on and on and on and just talk about these different levels of healing. But I just want to kind of recap and just let people know who you are. Like I said, she's a good friend of mine, but it's also a powerful leader. That's why this is kind of quirky in a way, but I hope you all were able to follow us as we had this conversation. But just understand these important nuggets that we're trying to share with you is the power in the story. And I just wanted to highlight this wonderful woman because what she's doing is so powerful. And I'm just grateful to be a part of what you're doing.
Thank you.
And before we close, do you want to please share your other platforms, your podcast. Please share the books you've written because this woman's been busy. So go ahead and share those real quick.
We are definitely expanding our platform. And every time we add something, it's for the purpose of expanding the platform for women in leadership to heal, lead, and leverage. So we recently launched Deeper Conversations with Dr. Barbara Swinney, and I'm super excited and grateful that Dr. Leona actually hosted our private podcast session at the conference. And man, I can't wait to hear the whole thing. I've been looking at the pictures. I can't wait to actually be a witness to hear it. So we have the Deeper Conversations podcast. We are releasing, and I didn't say this yesterday, but the Deeper Woman magazine is coming out, and surprise.
What? I didn't know that. Oh my goodness. Congratulations.
That'll be launched beginning of first quarter of next year, 2024. Okay. And then the Deeper Women Speak, the platform in the way that we are presenting it now as it being a marketing and branding event as well as a women's empowerment event, that is a little different from what we've done before. As a part of that platform, we have the Deeper Women Teach anthology series, and Dr. Leona was in the very first one. We are moving into volume 2. That one is also connected to the platform in that as you go through the Coach to Lead pathway to the Deeper Women Speak stage, one of the options is that you can take part in the anthology. That'll be released at the next event, September 8th and 9th. I believe that's when we're slated for Deeper Women Speak, September. And those are just a few of the platforms that we've established so far within the platform.
Yes, and I want people to understand the pathway part.
Okay.
When you say that, you know how things pop in my head when you're talking. Yes. Mm-hmm. It's like there's a lot of women that are listening and they're probably just sitting around and they'll look at people like us and be like, man, she has this platform, she's doing this, she's doing that. But they're sitting there with their own story and afraid to share it.
Yes.
So
that's
what Dr. Swinney is doing is allowing women that are listening that have a story that they're dying to share. And this is a way to do that, and you have that support to do it because a lot of women are scared. They're afraid of being judged, and they remain stuck because they refuse. But I don't think there's anyone else doing anything like what you're doing to give people a system to share their story. We just go out there and feeling unprotected when we do it.
Yes.
And we just put it out there. We're like this afterwards. But the way you're doing it, I just love it. I mean, what you're doing, when you told me the first time, I don't think you've forgotten. But I was just like, whoa, that's a wonderful idea. Yeah. So it's like you're doing for people sharing their story like I do for healers, people that want to be healed, giving them systems, giving them strategies instead of just guessing and trying to figure it out. Absolutely. So we got to have those systems. So I just wanted to add that in there. Absolutely. That is a very powerful thing.
And that's actually, Dr. Leona, where the women that you saw on the stage for the first time, they came through one of the pathways. So there are actually 3 pathways to the Deeper Women Speak stage. There is the Coach to Speak pathway, and this is for the woman that's never told her story before. So what I do is I work with these women to get clear about what the story is. Also, as you're gaining clarity about what the story is, some healing comes into play because you start to uncover, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that was in there. Sometimes people just want to speed through, and I say, no, let's go back to this. What's under this right here? Because you want people to get up and share their stories from a, if not completely healed place, but a place where they can really demonstrate their healing and how they've moved past it. So that's the Coach to Speak pathway. And then there's the Coach to Lead pathway. That's for the woman that's telling her story already. She might have a podcast, she might have a book, but doesn't quite know how to pull it all together. So I am bringing her in and I'm teaching her how to establish a platform. So how do I take all of this stuff and create a system, a structure, and have strategies for that platform? And then there's the Coach to Lead pathway. That pathway is for the woman who already has a platform, but she's looking to lock arms with another platform to partner and expand her impact and influence, like the anthology, like the conference. So any of those things that it really creates a space for collaboration and networking for women.
Yes, I love it. And I'm definitely going to put your information in the show notes.
Yes.
So for those of you listening that want more information, her information, how to contact her, will be in the show notes. All right, friend, Dr. Swinney, go ahead and just share any final comments that you would like to just share regarding today.
When you wake up, you want everybody to awaken to who they are. My goal, I feel like a part of my purpose is to wake people up to the giants that they are, to help them come into the awareness that you are so much bigger than the stuff that you've gone through. No matter what it is, you are going to be okay and you have something valuable to offer.
With that said, thank you.
Thank you.
Very powerful words. And there's one saying that I love you to say. I don't think you know this either. And I love it when you say it. It's like, if you want your life to go higher, you have to go deeper.
Yes.
That is one of my favorite sayings that you say, and that is so important. So once again, Dr. Barbara Swinney, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your platform, your energy, because you really put yourself out there 110% this weekend. And I know right now you're going to rest and recover and get ready for your next big thing.
Yes.
But to everyone listening, if you have any questions, please let me know. And again, I'll have her information in the show notes. And until next time, go out there and achieve more freedom in your health and your life. Take care.